Hey everyone, it's Desy Cheng, and welcome to the 2020 version of Which Camera Should You Buy? So I just want to mention that I'm not being paid by anyone to do this. I'm just doing this on my own accord. These are all of my own personal thoughts and opinions, and these are all the cameras that I personally own. I don't have them all because, well, I'm not that rich, but yeah, this is just a review based on that. In this video, I'm only going to be talking about my personal user experience with all of these cameras, and I'm not really going to be talking about the tech specs because you could find all of the information online yourself. Before I dive straight into this, I am going to be talking about the differences of mirrorless and DSLR. Essentially, DSLRs are like manual trucks. They're just bigger. They do this exact same thing as a mirrorless camera. Mirrorless cameras are smaller because they don't have a mirror, and they're usually a little bit more, technology savvy with different features and stuff like that. But they both will do the same thing. You can both use them in a professional atmosphere as well as if you're just using it as a beginner. Doesn't matter, DSLR or mirrorless, they will do the same thing. So what makes a great camera? There's actually 4 things that make a great camera. And the first thing you have to know is sensor size. So a lot of people think that, it's all about megapixels, having larger megapixels or more megapixels will make the camera better. That is not the case at all. It's about your sensor size. Larger is better. The larger your sensor is, the more information, the more light, the better image quality you're gonna get, period. And so the 3 main types of sensor sizes are Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, and full frame. So on the scale of things, your smartphone and small little point and shoot cameras have really small sensors. Taking one step up from that, you're looking at Micro Four Thirds. And with Micro Four Thirds cameras, you're pretty much only looking at Panasonic and Olympus. All of their cameras, or most of those cameras, are Micro Four Thirds in size. Taking another step up, you're looking at APS-C size cameras, and the largest one is full frame. There are larger ones like medium format, but we're not going to talk about those because that's on another level. The second thing that makes your camera great is your lens. Your camera is only as good as its lens. So even though you have a very high-end camera, but you put on a crappy lens, well, it's not going to be a crappy image, but it just won't be as good as it could be. So having nice glass put in front of your camera and put in front of the sensor will get you the ultimate in terms of image quality. The third thing that makes a camera great is the person behind the camera. Using their knowledge, expertise, and experience to know what settings to use, shot composition, things like that will produce a great image. Someone who has a lot of experience can take a really cheap and crappy camera and they can produce amazing images. And on the flip side of that, someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, and if they picked up a very high-end camera but they don't know how to use it, their images may not turn out to be as great as it could be. And the fourth thing that makes a camera great are all the features that it has. So if you're buying a camera that was, released from 2018 onwards, they all have, or most of them will have these basic features now, which make them all great. So things such as in-body stabilization, eye and face detection, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, HDR, articulating screens, so you can do selfie modes or whatever, and amazing low light, all of those things will help you produce better images. So diving into my suggestions of which camera to buy. So the number 1 camera that I think anyone should buy is right here. This is a smartphone, and a new iPhone 10, the Google Pixel, the Samsung, all of these new smartphones that have come out since like 2019 and newer are amazing. And you know what? People are always wanting to have like the best image quality. The iPhone or your smartphone won't have the best, but it's pretty damn good. And what I like about it is that it offers everything. You can have 4K, you have image stabilization, you could do selfie mode, you can have Wi-Fi tethering, you could do it's got multiple lenses or cameras on it. It's literally everything. And And you know, you've probably heard this term, but the best camera is the camera that you have with you. And this is the camera I have with me all the time. So this is the number one thing. And if you think about it, you know, what is this, like $1,000-ish? Well, a lot of these cameras are about $1,000, but this can do a lot more than what these guys can. So the best beginner, enthusiast, hobbyist camera that I can recommend, I'm gonna give you guys 4 different options. I think all 4 are great cameras, but it kind of depends on, you know, your own personal preference. And my suggestion is you go to a store and you try it out and see what works for you or not. So we're at the top of the list. I have the Sony a6000. I've had that camera, and even though it's an older camera, it's still one of the best all-round cameras for photo and for video. Number 2 is the Olympus OMD EM5 Mark III. I had the Mark I version and I loved it. The in-body stabilization is amazing. And yeah, it's just an overall great mirrorless camera. The next camera is the Canon EOS M200. So I have this guy because I picked this up for $350 Canadian, which works out to be like, I don't know, like $300 or less than $300 US. It was a steal of a deal. It came with the lens, and yeah, it's got, you know, a selfie mode, and it's just a very, very lightweight, compact camera. And the great thing about the Canon is the Canon colors are amazing. And if I shoot something with this or with my EOS R or my 1DX, they're very, very similar, and this matches up quite well. So highly recommend the M200. This is the M100, but the M200 is better. And then the last one that I would recommend is the Fujifilm X100F. So, or the T, but the F is way better. And they're coming out with another one as well, but it hasn't come out yet. But this guy is a fixed lens though, so just be aware of that. But the colors that this, you know, that all Fujis produce are amazing, and it's got this, it's, you know, retro style. It just feels amazing in the hand. So yeah, those are my options for the best beginner, enthusiast, hobbyist cameras. The best camera for selfies, if you're only interested in selfies, would be the Sony a6100. That's like one of their newer versions that came out in 2019, but it does have a flip out LCD just like this one, and you can turn around and very easily take a selfie. And then the next one would be the Canon EOS M6 as well as the M200. Again, this is the M100 I have here, but the M6 is the higher end version of the M200, has way more features, and yeah, those are my top picks for the best selfie camera. All right, for all you video guys, if you're looking for the best video camera for vlogging, my top 2 picks are the Panasonic GH5 as well as the Canon EOS R. I would put the GH5 slightly above the EOS R because of a few reasons. Number 1, the GH5 is lighter weight, so when you're holding a camera in front of you, it's not as heavy as the EOS R. And the other thing is also it's the EOS R and its lenses are much more expensive. So yeah, and the other thing to note is why these cameras are the best. A few reasons. Number 1, okay, it has a flippy LCD that goes, articulating LCD that goes off to the side, so you can mount a mic onto the top of the camera. So whereas in this case, if you had a swivel screen like this, yeah, you can use your audio, but sometimes the built-in microphones on these cameras suck. And so you definitely want to add on an external mic on top of your camera that you can plug in, and so that way the screen has to be on this side, and you can watch it like that. The EOS R is a great camera. It doesn't like this. The Panasonic one has better features. It does 4K 60p. The EOS R, the 4K isn't quite there yet, just because, you know, it's cropped in. But I would say the colors and the autofocus on the Canon EOS R are the best out of any camera system out there. The dual pixel autofocus on the EOS R is the best, and colors are amazing. So if you're just doing it for YouTube, the colors on the Canon EOS R are going to be straight up just better without doing any editing. But if you're going to be doing some kind of editing, of course you can kind of get the cameras to match. The next one is the best camera for someone who wants to just get a little bit more serious into photography. So what I would highly suggest is you stay within the ecosystem that you're at. So if you already own Canon lenses, just stay within Canon, because you know what, it doesn't matter which brand you go for, whether it's Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fujifilm, they're all gonna be great. And it just really just depends on like how you feel. I mean, they're all gonna have these amazing features, and but I'll kind of go brand by brand. So if you're in the Fujifilm's ecosystem already, I would highly suggest if you have the money, to get the Fujifilm X-T3. That is by far the best Fujifilm camera out there I mean, that's not a medium format. And I mean, the next step down is gonna be the Fujifilm X-T30. Both of those cameras have been amazing for stills and for video. And you know, I love it. I use it. It has a nice articulating screen. Yeah, this is the camera. The X-T3 is the camera to get if you're going to be in the Fujifilm ecosystem. Now, when moving on, let's go to Nikon. If you already own Nikon glass, some of the cameras out there, like the new mirrorless Nikon Z6, is okay. There's some quirks about it. I don't feel like there's enough support for it yet though. So if you're going to go stay with Nikon, I would rather you guys probably pick something like the Nikon D7500, the Nikon D750, Nikon D610. Any of those cameras are going to be great. But I would stay away from like the lower end ones, like the 3300 and the D5500 and those ones. I mean, at that point, you might as well just buy a new camera or like a new mirrorless camera of something else, because I feel like those cameras really lack features, and mirrorless is the way to go. So yeah, don't buy those ones. Moving on to Canon. So if there's a lot of people that use Canon out there, I would highly recommend like the Canon EOS R, the RP, the 90D, the 6D even. The 6D is an old camera, but it's amazing, and yeah, you can do a lot of things with it. And then moving on, we're gonna go to Sony. So Sony, now with the A6000 series, there's many. There's like the A6000, 6100, 6300, 60. There's like so many of them available. But I feel like if you're going to be getting a little bit more serious in photography, you got to step up to full frame with the Sony cameras. And the Sony A7 III is the one and only camera that is the best all-round camera for everything, for professionals, for enthusiasts, for everything. It's one of those cameras that will last a long time. And yeah, that's essentially it. Those are my suggestions for if you're jumping into and you want to get a little bit more serious into photography. Oh, I forgot one other thing regarding lenses. Lenses is another huge thing that you have to think about because that's going to determine cost as well. Nikon and Canon are obviously the two ones that have you know, tons of lenses available. You could buy them used for cheap. When you're looking at Fujifilm and Sony, lenses are, you know, there's not as many lenses around, and they are going to be a little bit more expensive, and you're not going to find as many on the used market for those ones. Next up, we have the most fashionable cameras on the market. So I have three here with me. The first one is one of my favorites. It is the Leica Q. I know there is a Leica Q2 that's out right now, but I can't afford it, so I have Leica Q. It's great because it's a full frame sensor. It's fixed 28 mils, and the quality and the sharpness of everything about it is absolutely amazing. And it's a Leica, so what else can I say about that part? Next one, this is one of the most criticized cameras, the Nikon DF. It's discontinued, you can't buy it anymore, but it's totally a hipster camera. And you know what, to be honest, like some of my best images that I actually produced were shot from this guy. Yes, people are saying like, oh, it's so stupid, and there's all these things that make photography slower. It's not meant to be like a sports camera or something. You know, this is just meant to just walk around and shoot, and you know, it feels nice in the hand, and I really enjoy it, and I still have it. So this is another one. The next one up is the Fujifilm. This is pretty much the X100 series, because whether you buy the 100T or F or whatever, or the S, they all look identical. I've owned like 3 out of the 4 versions. And yeah, I just love using it because it just looks great, and yeah, it's just a fun little camera. Next up, we have the best cameras for video production. So if you're looking into you know, a DSLR mirrorless camera for your video work, these are my top 3 picks. I have the Sony A7 III, I have the Panasonic GH5, and I have the Canon EOS R. I would say between these 3, my top 2 picks are definitely going to be with the Sony. I think Sony is the number one that I would choose and recommend for everyone. And it's just because it's widely used among wedding videographers, other videographers, and if you need to swap lenses and do things like that, Sony is quite versatile. Don't buy the earlier versions of the Sonys because they're okay, but the A7 III is where they really step things up. Next up is the GH5. This is a powerhouse. It has the best in-body stabilization out of any camera here. It does 4K 60p, and the bit rates on the files are amazing. You could do a lot with this, and lenses are a lot cheaper and smaller, and I feel like these two are the 2 video powerhouses. I'm going to throw the EOS R into the mix in there just because although I don't shoot anything professionally with it, I think it's, you know, one of the best for YouTube. So if you're shooting stuff and content for YouTube only, straight out of the box without doing any color correction, this has by far the best autofocus and color reproduction out of these cameras by far. Just my personal opinion, but yeah, that's what I think. If you're looking for the best professional camera and you're really wanting to make a career out of this, I would literally only stick to Nikon, Canon, and Sony. Again, like Panasonic is great, but you know, they're amazing for video, but not so great for photos, and same thing with the other ones. Now, Fujifilm, I know there's a lot of Fujifilm lovers out there, and you're gonna like crucify me for saying this. Hey, I use and I shoot with the Fujifilm, but when I compare it with performance-wise, I'm not talking about image quality, I'm talking about just performance-wise between the 1DX, the 5D Mark IV, the EOS R, and I want something that I can just really trust and know. And you know, like I have, you know, sometimes I hire other photographers to shoot with me, and I just want to make sure, you know, we have the same cameras and the file sizes are similar-ish when editing. Not many people use the Fuji in a professional world. Now, you guys can crucify me, but I'm just being 100% serious. Out of all my photographers, friends, and colleagues and things like that, most of them are using Nikon and Canon. And so I'm just gonna put this down, and if I only had to choose, you know, those 3 brands, it's gonna be Sony, Canon, and Nikon. Now, between those 3, you know, I would say that if you're gonna be needing some weatherproofing, then you know, we're gonna have to kick Sony out because it's not as weatherproof as the Canon and Nikon bodies. Then when it comes to Nikon or Canon, here's another thing is if you are doing any type of video work or you work with videographers and you need to lend them gear or loan them gear, then you know what? Then Canon is your only choice because there is not a lot of support with Nikon lenses. I mean, yeah, you can adapt Nikon lenses, but most other videographers out there are using Canon glass, and it just makes sense that you kind of stay within the ecosystem of Canon. And yeah, those are my suggestions for the top cameras. And right here I have the 5D Mark IV, I have the EOS R. These are the 2 cameras that I have been using mostly. I cannot tell you what the best professional camera for stills is because it's all personal opinion and it's what feels right for you. Some of my friends are using the Sony A7 III and they are loving and they're producing amazing results. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And some of my friends are using exclusively Nikon and they're producing amazing results. Again, mainly because I work with a lot of video as well. That's why I have chosen to stick within the Canon ecosystem and yeah, use my 5D Mark IV, my EOS R, as well as my 1DX. Sorry for the cutaway, but if you're wanting to shoot sports and you need a good sports camera, well, Canon just announced the 1DX Mark III. Nikon just announced or had preliminary things about the Nikon D6, and Sony has an A9, which is about a year old. But those are going to be your three best bets if you're going to be wanting to shoot sports. There is the 1DX Mark II and the 1DX Mark I. This is the 1DX Mark I, and I just shot with it over the weekend, and it still held up. Obviously, it could be improved, which is where the Mark II and the Mark III come in. But yeah, between those three cameras, which one is going to be right for you? Again, same thing. It just depends on which ecosystem you're in. I feel like between the three cameras, I think the Nikon and the Canon are going to be the two of the better choices, just because, you know, Sony's brand new into the game, you know, has a really high burst mode and frame rate. However, you know, tried, trusted, and true, and these guys are weatherproof, shooting in all conditions. You know, the 1DX and or 1DX Mark III, as well as the Nikon D6, are going to be your options for sports photography. Okay, and lastly, I'm going to tell you what my favorite camera is of 2019. And I'm saying 2019s because I had a full year to use all of these cameras here, and I'll tell you which one was my favorite, and it's probably going to be the one that I'm probably going to be picking up more and more this year. And that's going to be the Canon EOS R. When this thing came out in the very beginning, there was a lot of critics about it, and it's Canon's first mirrorless camera, and there's a lot of like flack about it, right? But ever since they've done firmware updates, they've released amazing lenses like this, you know, and I've been comparing, you know, the image quality side by side between my 5D Mark IV. You can't really tell a difference. But from a user functionality wise, I've gotten used to using the mirrorless system, and I find that it's easier and faster for me to use my Canon EOS R than it is for me to use my 5D Mark IV. So yeah, this is my favorite camera of 2019. All right, guys. So yeah, that was my review about, you know, my personal opinions and thoughts about, you know, what my favorite cameras and what my recommendations are for you and what to get. But at the end of the day, it's what you feel comfortable with, because all of these cameras, again, that were released from 2018 all the way until now, they're all amazing. It just depends on which ecosystem that you choose, whether it be Canon or Nikon, Sony or Panasonic or Fujifilm. I mean, you're gonna have great results, and whether you're a professional or you're not professional, all of these cameras can do either professional or non-professional job. It's just what feels great in your hands. It's kind of like buying a car. You know, all these new cars are coming out and they're all great. They all have amazing warranties. They're all reliable, and it just depends on how you feel about, you know, driving it. So anyways, if you've liked this review and you want to see me do more of these, like and subscribe, and definitely don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Desy31.